welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. Welcome back. It is Tuesday. I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company, managing partner of Saywitz Properties, and we are here to talk some more real estate. If there's one thing that I've learned in my 30-plus years of doing this, it's to surround yourself with good people, get good information, try and make good decisions, watch out a little bit for number one, don't step in number two, and try and take something away from you. And so today we're going to do a little twist of a show. Who says that the fires don't impact you still? We've had issues with our guest again this morning as a result of the fires, and so what Paul and I decided to do was make something up. And we flipped a coin, and what we decided on was that we would talk about outside factors that are going to influence the real estate markets here in Southern California, and what that means to all of us, whether it's the residential side, the commercial side, multifamily, what have you.
And how do you plan for unseen black swans that still may be flying our way here?
You pack extra underwear and some extra toothpaste and buckle up, right? And so before we get going, I do want to congratulate the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Both made it to the Super Bowl, so we'll anxiously await for that matchup. For the folks in Philadelphia, we wish you well. I think it's your turn, and well-deserved. For the folks in Kansas City, well, we love you and you're great.
Enough already.
Yeah, give somebody else a chance.
Your parents are from Detroit. I'm from Detroit.
My family's still in mourning over the Lions.
This was the year, finally, after 100 years, one of the few teams never even been to the big show, and they thought all but guaranteed, and once again fell on their face.
Yeah, sort of like the Chicago Cubs, right? So with all of that said, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit of real estate. And I want to, I guess, focus on what factors we think are going to impact the real estate markets here and why. And there really is no way to plan. There's really no way to know what's going on. We are in a state of flux, obviously, in the first 100 days of the Trump administration. Every day something comes out.
Every day.
That's the plan. Whether you call it disruption, whether you call it change, whether you call it modify what's going on, it doesn't matter. It's going to be different than what it was the day before, is my expectation.
But don't markets hate uncertainty? And this time, more than ever, this is all about let's overthrow so many things. Let's shake it up. Let's see what happens. Let's keep everybody off balance. And you say it's a negotiating tactic, maybe, but doesn't it just unnerve the markets?
Well, look, you and again, we're not going to look in a window, but if you look yesterday, there was an announcement that an AI company out of China was able to develop similar software with only a few $1 million than what American companies had spent billions on developing. And so you see the stock market relative to the AI world and tech stocks tank.
Right.
So people react to the mini, but the fact of the matter is we're not living in the mini. Tomorrow will be another day and something else will happen, good or bad. The question becomes, if I'm trying to make decisions relative to real estate, relative to my business as a business owner, relative to whether I sell a house or a property, or buy a house or a property, or invest in real estate, or put it someplace else, what do I do? And there is no crystal ball, and I have financial people that come in and we kick this question around all the time. The question then becomes, what outside factors should I be watching that are going to impact what happens to me on a daily basis? And while I can't control any of those things, I guess I got to keep an eye on them. And so let's try and pick them off one at a time.
Well, the one that's being threatened openly, and I don't know, is it just a negotiating tactic to get people to the table or to get what we want, or will we really go back to the 1930s and start putting giant tariffs on everything coming in, which means then they'll respond and do the same thing, and we got a tariff war?
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, I think that the American consumer, while on the surface, You have Democratic senators poo-pooing it and bashing it, saying that the American consumer is going to pay for it. No different than this week, where the president threatened to put tariffs on products from Colombia, which would tax coffee. And so then you have to ask the question, is the consumer really going to pay? Or would you just buy coffee from someplace else in the world if it was cheaper? So if you went to Starbucks and there was a tariff on Colombian coffee, would you buy coffee from Nicaragua instead? Would you buy coffee from Sumatra instead, which would be $3 instead of $4, $2 instead of $3? And the answer is, unless you really wanted that Colombian coffee, you just buy the cheaper one.
But some things we don't have a choice. I mean, we've invested large manufacturing capabilities in China, right or wrong, under multiple administrations for multiple decades now here. We've taken much of our manufacturing base and moved it over there, or places like that. I don't know that we can just instantly say, well, I'll buy it from somewhere else, because it might not be anywhere.
You're not going to instantly change, but you've already seen major corporations at least give the impression or make the statement that they're going to pull back here to the United States, or they're going to go someplace else. You also have to understand that many of the maquiladora factories in Mexico are actually owned by, run by, and are a facade for Chinese companies, right? And so while
I've heard that. I don't know that's a fact, but I've heard that. Yeah, right.
It's widespread. And so you have a Mexican partner, business partner, you have a Mexican company that is the shell of the company, and it's just run by a Chinese company. And so to think that you're attacking Mexico with a tariff, you're really in fact getting to China at the end of the day. And so you're not taxing every single product in every single industry. You're taxing certain products, and then the consumer will have to decide if they're going to buy that product or not. And then I don't believe that tariffs will be for an extended period of time. I believe that whatever the tariff is, whether it's 2.5% or 25%, it will be to prove a point, and it will be a negotiating tactic for something else. This is not about taxing coffee or taxing, goods from China or clothing that's made there. It's about getting to the government on a bigger picture. And so the question then is just, we could debate the politics of it all day. What does that mean for the real estate side of things?
Exactly, because one of your recent guests, was it Bill Schoffoff or somebody else, you were talking about how deal flow still hasn't returned to flowing.
Yes.
It's hesitant. And so people are still saying, well, I'm going to wait until this settles down.
So I get back to the perception of the market, the perception of the economy weighs far greater than what is really going on. And so if people perceive that there's going to be tariffs and I need to slow down my spending, number one, a byproduct of that might be that it curbs inflation, which is what we need. Right. The second piece of it is, if I'm going to curb my spending, how does that affect restaurant industry? How does that affect going out and buying extra goods and
hotel,
clothing?
retail, yeah,
sure, travel. So I've already spoken to a number of vacation rental companies in Orange County, which is heavily dependent upon tourism in Newport Beach, especially with vacation rentals. And what they said was, there was a lull. There was a lull in the holidays, and the lull was a result of multiple things. Number one, fear of the economy. Number two, I spent more money on presents, so I decided not to come. Now you have the fires of people thinking that Newport Beach is in the fires, which it's not. And so perception dictates action, which then impacts the real estate market.
We should have, who was the guy you had on that handles short-term rentals on Balboa Island? I forgot.
We had a couple of folks, and so I spoke to them last week, and they handle properties for us. And while they're telling me that for the summertime people are now starting to book in advance, the fact of the matter is, in today's world, for today, it's slow. Right. And so if you I've talked to people on the residential side of things, and you look at transaction volume on home sales, it's slow.
Yeah.
So why is that? Yeah. Because you don't have the foreign investors coming as much. They're waiting to see what happens. Mm-hmm. You don't have people going out and buying properties because the interest rates are still high. What the average person doesn't know is that interest rates in the fourth quarter of 2024 actually went up from where they were before, while there was talk of the fact that interest rates would come down and the Fed reduce the rates. And that means if the Fed reduces the rate, my interest rate should be less. It's just not true. And so
talk about that for a second, because I don't get that. You just say that so casually. We all thought Fed cuts the rate, that automatically translates into lower interest rates for every consumer thing, from houses to cars to credit cards.
No, credit cards, yes, right? So when the Fed reduces the rate, interest rates on your savings account automatically are going to come down and be adjusted, right? Those are short-term interest rate adjustments. interest rate on your credit card could come down from 25% to 24.5%, which is not going to save you much at the end of the day.
No.
Right? And so what it doesn't do is it doesn't move the needle on long-term interest rates. And long-term interest rates, when I say long-term, could be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, certainly 30 years. So if you're buying a home and you want to put a 30-year mortgage and you want a bank to lock in for 30 years, that is a long-term commitment.
Right.
The bank is not swayed by what the Fed did or the stock market did today. They need a return, and they're not going to lend unless there's a certain return, and that return is tied to treasuries. That return is tied to their cost of money. And so
their perception of what that 30 years is going to look like.
And so you have many banks that have pulled back and said, look, we're going to lend, but we're not, aggressively lending because we want to be careful about the loans that we're going to make because we're afraid at higher interest rates, people may struggle with them. Secondly, if you're on the commercial side and you want to go buy an apartment building or an office building and you got to go get money at 7%, and you're buying something with a 4% cap rate or a 4% return or less in some instances, how does that pencil? You're just going to lose money with the debt. And so the only hope is that interest rates will come down later in the year or next year, and then I'll be able to go refinance. And then the promise that interest rates go back to 2 or 3 or 4% is just non-existent. There's no one I've spoken to.
Nobody seems to think that's coming.
That says it's ever going to happen. If interest rates went to 5, you'd be happy 5 is a better number than 7.
And historically, that was a good number. When you look at the Carter years or other things, we were in 10s.
Right, but again, when interest rates were at 5 the last time, cap rates were at 6 because you could have an the return has to be more than my ability to borrow, right? And so what happened is when interest rates went to 3%, the cap rates went to 4 or 3.5, and so there was still a spread. But then when interest rates went up, the cap rates didn't move, and that is a result of too much money trying to buy product and not a lot of product, and I'm not really a motivated seller. And so what you have is and everybody we've had on the show said the same thing, which is when you have a motivated seller that has an event or needs to sell or something happened,
death, divorce, something, whatever,
then there's a much higher likelihood that you're going to make a deal because you have somebody who is reasonable. If you have somebody who says, look, I would sell, but not unless I get my number, and my number's yesterday's number, that guy sits. Right, so
I had a guy, for example, maybe this is a weird anecdote, but as we've talked about a few times, I inherited a property out in the desert, so I rent it out. I'm a one-man rental company here. I'm more and more Americans have something else that we're holding on to. And somebody called me up out of the blue, never had that happen, and said, would you sell this property? Somebody representing somebody. I said, maybe, but it'd have to be a really good number. I'm not looking to sell it. I don't need to sell it. But sure, might I sell it? Everything's for sale at the right price, supposedly. And I thought to myself, is that the future here? It's just...
Yeah, but that's been going on for years. I mean, there are people from a marketing standpoint. I get letters almost on a daily basis from some realtor, some real estate broker, some investor who says the same thing. Hey, I would buy your property, and then whatever your number is, if your property is worth $1 million and you tell me your number is $2 million, I'm not going to waste my time with you.
Right.
But maybe you might tell me, hey, look, I would sell it at $1 million. And then the guy says, I'll take the listing, or I will buy it from you. Or, hey, I'm not going to buy it, but I'll help you market it. And then you put it on the market at $1 million and it doesn't sell. And then I come back and say, hey, Paul, I think we could get it for $900. We could get it sold. Do you want to adjust? And then you come back. So those are marketing tactics to try and get somebody to get off the dime and sell. That is not what is generating deal flow in the marketplace, and that is not what's dictating pricing in the marketplace. So let's go back to what factors are going to impact the real estate world, because these are the things that I look at.
2025, we're looking ahead, new administration, the whole thing seems, the current administration seems to be like to drop these bombs and see what happens and use them as negotiating tactics to keep everybody off balance.
Sure, but people say, oh, there's tariffs. I say that's not going to rock my world. And I'll tell you why. Because if there's a tariff on goods from China, people will just adjust their spending habits and what they're buying in the short run. And then China may come back with some other counter scenario, and then it'll be tit for tat until it sorts itself out. And the purpose of the tariffs is not to penalize the American consumer. The purpose of the tariffs is to get the Chinese government
do something
closer
different.
to where we would like them to be on other issues.
Right.
It's
a leverage.
I hit you in the gut because I really want to punch you in the face, right? I mean, these are negotiating tactics that this is the very beginning of it. And the fact that the consumer or the press doesn't really know what's going to happen is exactly what I would want if I was doing it, because that's how I get what I want.
But if, again, it goes back to the question, then it creates uncertainty and
but a tariff's not going to
nervousness.
stop me from buying a piece of property. It's not going to stop me from buying or selling a house, and it's not going to impact interest rates. What's going to impact interest rates is inflation, cost of living, right? Employment. And so those are byproducts of other things that get back to it. Now, will tariffs have some impact on that? Yeah, they potentially could.
Yeah, historically, that's been seen as an inflationary...
Okay, but here's the domino effect, right? So you implement a tariff, and then people start spending less. And then if they spend less and they go out less, then retailers and restaurants hire less people, right? They're already hiring less people. Every fast food restaurant there is going to a kiosk.
Yeah.
Everybody is only hiring people on a part-time basis. I don't say everybody, but most hiring people on a part-time basis because they don't want to give them the benefits in the full-time employment, right? In California, you have restaurant and fast food servers and workers making $20 an hour, right? And so you have minimum wage just went up again, and I say those are all good things in certain respects, but just puts pressure on business owners to be able to and all they're doing is passing it along, right? So if I'm the administration, I have to try and take it in pieces. I can't solve it all in a day, and some of these, if I fix this piece, it will knock this piece down. And so you have that. You also have, and so if inflation is in check, the Fed is more likely then to reduce interest rates. What about gas prices? So now they're drilling, right? And then now they're going to make deals with the Saudis and try and get gas prices down. That will be an immediate impact to the overall economy, right? And if you're in Kansas and gas is $2 something a gallon, it's not on the top 5 of your list. But if you're in California and gas with a credit card for premium gas is well over $5 a gallon, it is. So those are real things that impact it. But again, that gets back to, if I feel like I have more money to spend, I will spend it, and then I will fuel the economy. Now, as a business owner, I would tell you, if I believe, or a business owner believes, that tomorrow's going to be a better day, I'm going to start to make plans in terms of whether it's my hiring or whether it's my spending or whether it's upgrading systems or things like that. And so those kinds of things will then also have an impact on the real estate market. If I continue to hire people, the bad news with that, while it's good to hire people and it's good to grow, is the bad news with that is employment numbers still stay high, which keeps the Fed from lowering rates because they say, gee, employment exceeds unemployment, and you have an inverse relationship. The other issue of that is if people are hiring, theoretically, you would think that at the end of the day, they might need more space. Their business is growing. Now, that doesn't apply to every business because not every business, if I hire people, correlates to the need for space, whether that's industrial or office space or what have you. Either my people are working from home, or if I hire people, they're out in the field, or if I hire people, I can still fit them in the footprint that I've got. But I would just say, look, business growth for small business is good for the economy, period. So there has to be the perception that new businesses start up, that existing small businesses can grow and feel comfortable that they have a framework to do that, and then you will see the economy grow.
Can the perception not match the reality? There were many, certainly on the Democratic side, that argued the economy was pretty good shape, but yet the public said it's in bad shape, and that was part of the reason that Democrats lost.
I have my own views on it. You want to hear it? Which is the economy was not in good shape. I mean, I talk to business owners every day in what we do, and they would tell you, you have cost of inflation, cost of wages, cost of goods, cost of insurance, cost of doing business. And then on top of that, I have regulations from the government, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, just squishing me down. And so it's very hard to eke out a profit with not raising prices and not passing it along or doing something different. And so as a business owner, you try and save costs and do what you can, but that also is a negative impact on the real estate market.
Right.
Because then I take less space, then I go get cheaper space, then I haggle
Put
for
off
cheaper
the deals,
rent, right? I don't expand, I don't buy a building. So you really got to keep a close eye on what I'm going to call just business growth, right? And if there is business growth, that will be good for the real estate.
Who measures that? Is there a metric for that?
Yeah, well, you look at employment numbers, right? You look at new business startups, and so
New
the
business
SBA
startups,
administration,
that'd be
people will track SBA loans, people will track business lending, right? If banks are lending to businesses because they need money to grow, then you'd know that people are expanding. If business lending is down, which it is, it's because people aren't expanding, right? And they don't want to take on debt. Number one, it's expensive.
Yeah.
And number two, I'll just wait.
Last question: what keeps you awake at night? So, is there another black swan hovering around that you say, "Boy, I hope that doesn't land"?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, what keeps me there's many things that keep me awake at night, but some
noisy neighbors, no,
some good, some bad, right? But what concerns me is that if the average person struggles, it impacts so many other things. And so if the average person who is renting an apartment has to pay more for everything else in their world, it puts a strain on their ability to pay rent. It puts a strain on their ability to pay more rent.
Right.
It puts a strain on their ability to provide for their family. All of those are bad things for my world, the real estate world, and for them. So you want the average person to do better. And I think that's why Trump won so handily, which is that the average person said, I am not better off. I would like to be better off. And the perception of better off is better than nothing at all, right? Even if I really am not better off, but I feel better off, or I think I'm better off, that works for me. Because it affects people's spending habits, and it affects people's...
So to a certain degree, there's a certain reality. Am I better off? In a certain degree, it's just it's a perception. If I feel better... So many today things are all about feelings. How do you feel about that? How does that make you feel? What do you feel is going to happen? And I thought, when do we go back to facts? We live in a feeling-based world more and more. I don't know. Does it feel safe? Does it feel right? Does it feel good?
Right. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you go for a therapy session, they ask you how you feel.
How you feel?
You said, if I felt good, I probably wouldn't be here, right? I mean, so, and then some people want to talk about it. Some people don't want to talk about it. But the other things I think you've got to look at is also the stock market, right? So if the stock market is going up and not bouncing all over the place,
which it has been,
then you can feel like there's some steady growth, which this gets back to, if I feel like my investments or my portfolio is steadily growing, I would go out and buy a new bike or a new whatever.
How does that affect the average Joe? Because I've read so many statistics, it's a tiny percentage of people that own stocks. I mean, the majority of people don't own stocks.
Yeah, but I would tell you that those people... there's a small percentage that control a much larger percentage of the economy. Right. So 90% of the people don't control 90% of the economy. Right.
Isn't a one-to-one, right? Yeah.
Right. And so if 20% of the people control 90% of the economy, those are not accurate numbers, but hypothetically, if that was the case, it's those 20% that I want to focus on because they will fuel the economy. I'm back to, if business owners are spending, if business owners feel good, they will hire people, they will increase wages, they will go out and do other things, which then spur the other people, right? So if I went to a restaurant and I felt good and I left a big tip, that helps somebody else.
Right.
If I went to a retail store and I bought a new suit or a new dress, that would help somebody else. So even these are the domino effects that you have to...
Even in a world of uncertainty, some would say chaos or confusion, what's your perception? What's your feeling in the pulse here?
I mean, look, I talk to other people in the real estate world, and people come to me all the time with deals. Would you buy this? Would you do this? And if the deal doesn't pencil on its own, I can't do it. Not that I can't do it. I'm not going to do it, right? I'm not going to take a chance on a deal that has a bad return. I'd rather do nothing than take the risk, and unless there's some extenuating circumstances.
And that seems to be where we're at. I'll do nothing without taking...
Yes. So the problem is, if I'm trying to get people to do something versus nothing, what do I need to do to spur that on? And that is A, perception, B, interest rates, C, cost of living, right? All of the above. I also believe that if you see with what the administration is going to do, if you see them tackle one problem, which they're going to go try and tackle a bunch of...
all at once, right? Yeah.
Because if it was me, I'd throw a bunch of darts on the wall, and if one thing worked, it might help the other thing. And if the thing that I did for the other thing didn't work, this thing might make it work a little. And And you'll now start to see one action impact other aspects.
So don't focus historically. You find one thing, I'm going to focus and fix this.
Yeah, no.
Right, throw 50 darts out and see what happens.
Of course, and he's got a full plate. I mean, you got wars, you got inflation, you got trade wars. But I like the idea that Mexico sort of bucked what he was trying to do, and then he renamed the Gulf, and then he closed the border.
Who saw that one coming?
But he closed the border. Now people are trapped in Mexico, and Mexico doesn't know what to do with it, and then it's welcome to my world. Right now, you know what I was dealing with, and so now you better figure it out, because before it was, look, it's your problem, you guys figure it out, and what he said now is, no, now it's your problem too, and so you're going to get with the plan, or you're just going to deal with the consequences. And with Colombia, it was, okay, you don't want to let the people off the plane, I'm just going to slap you with tariffs. And look, you look at Canada, right? So there are people that are getting on board, and the premise is I will rule with a strong hand. And if you don't do it the way we're going to do it, boy, you're odd man out.
But can't that backfire in other ways too, or something?
Look, I guess we're going to see.
We're going to find out.
The fact of the matter is, don't kid yourself. The U.S. economy is absolutely the strongest, largest economy. The U.S. consumer is the largest customer.
Despite COVID and a million black swans, it still flies.
Right, of anyone. And so if people stopped bucking what the administration's trying to do and got on board more with the program, then it would send an even clearer, stronger message to other people that were taking advantage of what we had before. And so the fact that you still see stuff in the press, and I'm not picking on anybody's political views, I'm just saying, hey, look, give them a chance to do what they're going to do. And if they fail, then criticize them. Why criticize them now?
Well, that's been the norm for how many administrations, left, right, and center. The minute they come in and they say, boo on you, we're not going to do anything you want.
I say, look, I don't have to drink Colombian coffee. I don't have to buy Chinese-made goods, right? I can change my habits, right? And I'm pretty tough to change.
The best drugs come from Colombia, though, so that would be hard to change, though.
Well, that's for a small percentage. And you don't get any tax money on it. But,
no.
But back to the real estate side of things, I guess I would just say, look, in closing, the issue is if you're thinking about buying or selling a piece of property or your home, then you will, if you're on the fence now, my expectation is you'll probably still be on the fence in 60 days because we're waiting to see how some of these things play themselves out. The problem is the more people stay on that fence, the further out things get pushed. And so then you are stuck in whatever world we have today. I would like to get to a different stepping stone as quickly as possible. That's a positive one for everybody. And I guess we'll see how that, plays itself out.
Okay, stay tuned.
Yeah. So anyway, for those that have tuned in and listened to our rant and debate, hopefully productive conversation, I guess the one thing that I would take away from this is stay tuned.
Stay tuned. That's the only thing I can do is stay tuned.
Right. We'll see you back here next week. I'm Barry Saywitz on Let's Talk Real Estate. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, there you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.